Nice crowd today, and let's get started. Like I said, we'll continue admitting folks as they arrive, but we have an hour together, which goes by very quickly, especially when we're in a virtual environment. So welcome. I'm delighted that we can all be here together on a Wednesday afternoon to talk about a very important topic that I know is on a lot of people's minds. Whether or not you are a graduate student, whatever phase you're at in your studies, applying for funding is a question that we all have to grapple with at a certain point. And so I hope that today's webinar will really provide you a toolkit, whatever phase of your studies you're at, whether you are a current graduate student or a prospective graduate student. We're thinking of this kind of as applying for funding 101. What are the things you need to know to look for, identify, and then apply for competitive external awards? We'll also tell you a little bit about some internal awards that are available to you at UTEP. So without further ado, I'll introduce myself. I'm Shannon Connolly. I'm the Assistant Dean of the Graduate School here at UTEP, and I am joined today by a few of my colleagues from the Graduate School who I'd love to introduce to you as well. They are Sal Dominguez, who is a PhD student in interdisciplinary health sciences and a graduate assistant with us in the Graduate School. Sal will probably be keeping in touch with you in the chat today and linking some resources there. And I'm also joined by Lourdes Jimenez, who is one of our undergraduate assistants. Lourdes is an undergraduate student, a junior in biochemistry, and has been working with us as an undergraduate assistant on the professional development and outreach team. So just a quick reminder for those of you who've been coming in the last few minutes about Zoom etiquette. We probably have muted you as you're coming in, but if not, just know that for the presentation portion of today's workshop, we'll ask that you keep your microphones muted just so that the sound quality is a little bit better. You're welcome to turn your webcams on so we can see your faces and know that there's some people out there listening and following along. You're also welcome to leave it off if you prefer. But when we get to the more interactive sections of the workshop where we pair you to do a little personal statement worksheet, we'll ask that then you do turn on your microphone so you can talk to each other. And when we get to the Q&A section, you're also welcome to turn on your microphone and your camera so that you can ask your question directly. Otherwise, feel free to post questions in the chat. We'll keep an eye on those as we go along. And then when we get to breaks, we will either pose your question for you or ask if you'd like to ask it yourself. So now I would like to introduce my colleague, actually ask her to introduce herself and her new office and her colleagues to you so we can get started with the presentation. So Dr. Melanie Meinzer, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Connolly. My name is Dr. Melanie Meinzer, and I am the director of the new Office of Student Fellowships and Awards. You may have not heard of this office before, and that's because it's new as of this summer. And the office was created to work with you, to work with undergraduate and graduate students who are applying for prestigious external fellowships, scholarships, and other awards. So I'll give you a sense of the scope of the office, which fellowships we work with in particular, but what I want to do in this session is also give you the tools to look for fellowships in your specific field. So as you can imagine, for undergraduate students, there are a lot of general fellowships for study abroad. For recent graduates and then also for graduate students, we have awards like the Fulbright program. But when you get to your graduate degree, whether you're in a master's or a PhD program, there will be awards in your field that won't be necessarily supported through my office, but which we can offer you resources and tools as you work on those applications. So keep in mind that in addition to the internal funding resources that Dr. Connolly is going to talk about, there are a wealth of other resources, other opportunities external to the institution, and that's what I'll be talking a bit about today. So I am also delighted to introduce my colleague, Morgan Robledo. She is a undergraduate student in anthropology. Morgan, I'll let you introduce yourself, say a few words. I put you on the spot, but please.
So I'm Morgan Robledo, like Dr. Meinzer said, and I am a junior who's majoring in anthropology currently. And I'm excited to help Dr. Meinzer introduce this office to all the students at UTEP who probably haven't heard of it. And I guess that's really it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see here. Our next step is, okay, so we're going to start the slideshow. And we'll be going through the first half of this session. We'll be talking about the opportunities, and the second half will be the personal statement worksheet that Dr. Connolly talked about. So we've done this so that you have some starting off points for thinking about where to look for fellowships, an overview of how to apply, and then we're going to get you start thinking about how would I write a personal statement, because nearly every fellowship application has this crucial essay. And it's often the most difficult to write. How do you set the studies aside for the statement of purpose and talk about you as an applicant, what makes you unique, why you're connected personally to what you study, and all of that good stuff. So I will share my screen here. And please give me a thumbs up if you can see the slideshow. Perfect. Okay, so what we'll cover today, talk about internal funding opportunities. We'll talk about supported fellowships through my office, the Office of Student Fellowships and Awards. We'll go through the basics of a strong application, and then we'll move you into breakout rooms in pairs, where you will do a personal statement activity. And we'll give you a worksheet to do this with. And we'd like at that point, if you can, to use your camera so that you can introduce each other and get to know each other a bit. And then we'll close with some question and answers. A question that we get a lot when students are looking for funding resources is, what's out there? And so I think it's helpful to think of it in two categories. The first will be internal fellowships, scholarships, and that is funding that comes from the institution. So whether you're an undergraduate now and you're thinking of graduate school, or you're in a graduate program at UTEP, internal funding means money that is available to students at the institution, coming from sources that have either directly from the institution or funneled through the institution. So you think about that as different from external awards, where anybody across the country, anybody who's doing a PhD in your field, a master's in your field, could potentially apply for that award. Internal funding is a bit different, and oftentimes doesn't require, in many cases, the same timeline to apply for. These external awards run on an annual basis for the most part, and so you need to be planning ahead for them anywhere from 3 to 6 months to a year. With internal funding, oftentimes you're applying at the time of admission. I'll let Dr. Connolly talk more about that. But a concrete example of internal funding would be getting admitted to a PhD program with a tuition waiver and a cost of living stipend. In this case, we're talking about cost of attendance, cost of living, basic living expenses. Whereas if you are applying for an external fellowship, it tends to be multi-year support. For example, the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program, the Hertz Foundation Fellowship, all multi-year programs. And they often expect a core part of an external fellowship application would be a unique, independent, for the most part, research project that you're going to carry out. So you're proposing in your statement of purpose a project. It's basically a grant proposal, but at the student level. So for example, other external fellowships that fund graduate programs for graduating seniors and recent graduates, the Rhodes Scholarship, a very well-known one, but also the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. So when I show you some of the programs that are supported through the Office of Student Fellowships and Awards, I want you to think about which programs that are open to students in all fields that you could potentially apply for. And Fulbright is one that I think graduate students don't often think of as for them, but you can actually apply for a US student grant, Fulbright US Student Program grant, to do research overseas, whether in a lab, whether you're doing research in the social sciences, there's performing arts awards. It's really open to students in all fields, and you're eligible for Fulbright up until you receive your PhD. So to reiterate, with external funding, we're talking about a total package of an award that pays for all of your expenses to do a particular project in most cases. But then there are also awards that offer multi-year support that can support you throughout your graduate program. So it's important to apply for both. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Connolly to talk a bit more about internal funding, how that works.
Sure thing. And I'll keep this pretty brief because I want to direct everyone to the bottom of this slide with the URL to our funding page. So the graduate school's website is utep.edu/graduate, and our funding page is /funding. And there you'll find tabs to both internal and external funding opportunities. But we're focusing here on the internal page. So you see that red arrow pointing at the top navigation bar, that's where you'd click, you'd select internal funding, and you would come to this page. So as Dr. Meinzer mentioned, one type of internal funding to support your graduate study might be something like a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship where you work 20 hours a week, you receive benefits and a salary to do that work. Other types of internal funding are one-time grants and awards. And I'm showing you a list of the types of one-time grants and awards that the graduate school supports and offers to our current students. And you see the list of them there about halfway down the page next to the photo of one of our graduate students working in the lab. And I'll mention them all very briefly right now. Again, you can find a lot more information about the application guidelines, the deadline cycles, when you can apply for these awards, and a lot more information about what to put into your application at each of those links. But in brief, the graduate school has funding to support student travel. Right now, of course, many of you probably know that travel is very, very restricted. It's quite limited. It is allowed. There are some students who are traveling with the approval of the Student Travel Office and the VP for their area. But there is not a lot of student travel happening at the moment. For that reason, we've revamped our travel grant program this year to be able to support virtual travel. So participation, presentation at virtual conferences in your area of study, your professional society conference that happens once a year, a lot of them are doing them virtually now. So the travel grant program is open to registration fees for those type of virtual events. And those awards have 4 deadlines per year. The next one is coming up tomorrow, October 15th at 11:59 p.m. So if you are traveling virtually and presenting at a conference and you aren't aware of this award, I encourage you to check out those guidelines and try to submit an application. So the first deadline of the year is tomorrow. There'll be another one in late November, and then 2 additional deadlines in the spring. And those are awards of up to $850 for, again, travel or virtual travel to present at conferences or take part in other professional development opportunities. The Dodson Research Grant is exactly as it says. It's a research grant program that provides kind of micro grant support to master's or doctoral students who are at the research phase of their program. So these are really great awards that can help you when you get to that kind of middle phase. You've already done your proposal, you're thinking about getting started on your project, whether it's your thesis or your dissertation, and you need funding to conduct research. It might be travel in a time when we can travel. It might be usable equipment for your research project in the lab, anything related to that research project. And these are slightly bigger awards of up to $3,500. We have 2 application cycles per year. One of them is coming up at the end of October. The other one will be in the spring. And the Dodson really operates like a mini grant program. We ask applicants to also apply for other external funding opportunities. It's a requirement starting this year. And you'll submit a short research proposal, a statement of support from a mentor. So again, as we get into the external funding section of this presentation, you'll see that this opportunity really mirrors a lot of the competitive external opportunities. So it can be a good way to practice before you get to that point. The 3-minute thesis competition is something the graduate school sponsors every spring. This is an opportunity to present your thesis or dissertation research in 3 minutes or less using one PowerPoint slide. And the winners receive cash awards. This is a really fun competition. I love this. And the winners can go on to compete in the regional and national 3MT competition for additional cash prizes and glory. The next opportunity you see here, the Natalicio Dissertation Fellowship, it's not a direct application, but a nomination. That's for an outstanding doctoral student in the very final stage of their graduate study. They're nominated by their programs. That application happens, or that nomination cycle happens in the spring. The Doctoral Excellence Fellowship, I'm skipping one, but I'll come back to it. The Doctoral Excellence Fellowship is also a nomination process, and that's a recruitment fellowship to bring in outstanding doctoral students into PhD and our EDD program. The Summer Enhancement Award is a new program that we piloted last year. It's a very small pot of money, and we selected 3 students last year to provide research funding in the summer to work on a project that could help improve or enhance graduate education at UTEP. So we had students from all different programs proposing projects that could range from an algorithm to develop, help us improve a process, to providing actually the peer writing support program that we recently launched. That was one of the funded projects. And so those are all of the internal opportunities the graduate school currently supports. And again, if you need more information about them, click the URL I'm showing here on the screen and you can find out a lot more.
Thank you. And I want to chime in on the 3-minute thesis. It's really a great way to, if you're about to finish your PhD and you're going on the job market and you need to give that elevator pitch of, here's my research, you make it fun and engaging. And I had friends who did it when I was finishing my PhD and they had a ball. I also saw a lot of videos circulating, like Dance Your PhD was another one, which I thought was amazing, especially in the science field. So those were interesting. Okay. So let's talk about some of these supported fellowships through the Office of Student Fellowships and Awards. This is just a subset of what's on our website. And I chose these because they're for undergraduate and graduate students, but particularly graduate study. Gates Cambridge is for, you don't have to have, so I put Gates Cambridge up there because, as you'll find, most of these fellowships require US citizenship. That's just a sad fact of how these foundations work. So if you're an international student, you're looking for funding, always check eligibility before you get started on an application. Gates Cambridge is one to look at if you're looking to do a graduate degree at the University of Cambridge. It's in the UK. You choose a program of study, you apply directly to Cambridge University, and then you indicate that you want to be considered for the Gates Cambridge. It's very similar to the Rhodes Scholarship. So for graduate fellowships, the big 3 or 4 would be Gates Cambridge, Rhodes Scholarship, Mitchell Scholarship to Ireland and Northern Ireland, and the Marshall Scholarship. And so if you are a graduating senior or recent graduate, you're going to want to look at those. And so those are for full degree programs overseas. If you're looking for funding to do a research project, the Fulbright US Student Program study research grants are what you should look at. So there are 2 types of Fulbright grants. There are English teaching assistantships, which are generally appeal to graduating seniors looking to do a gap year before going on to graduate school or doing something else. They're also open to current graduate students, but you may find that proposing a research project is the way that you want to go if you're going to take time away from campus to do overseas study, which I absolutely recommend. It can only make you a stronger candidate for future roles in research or in teaching. But study research is really what most graduate students will apply for. And so there are over 2,200 Fulbright grants in total. There are a lot of them. This is what I'm getting at. Fulbright is an amazing program because if you apply and you choose a country that you have a research connection to, so you ask your advisors, do you know anybody who does research in my field overseas, anywhere, and see who they suggest to you, because you want to have a connection, a potential affiliation when you start developing your application. But it's really a great opportunity to get overseas for usually a period of about 10 months and start building your network, in addition to having probably a very transformative experience for you personally as well. National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program, another big one that you've likely heard of if you're in the sciences. That's open to graduating seniors, and I believe it's first semester graduate students, if that's right. So a lot of these programs, also the Hertz Foundation Fellowship, also open to graduating seniors, first year graduate students in the sciences. You're noticing that I'm talking a lot about different points at which you are eligible. So this is what I will be getting to when I talk about how do you start looking for fellowships to apply to, is it helps to not necessarily start within your field, but to look at what stage am I at, and are there fellowships that are open to students in all fields, even ones that you might not associate with, say, Fulbright and the sciences is not the first association in my mind. I think of social sciences, I think of language studies, cultural studies, but Fulbright is a great opportunity for students in the sciences because they don't get as many of those applicants. So keep an eye out for fellowships that are outside of your field as well as within it. And finally, the Boren Awards. This is a undersubscribed program, meaning there is money and fewer applicants. So thinking strategically about where to invest your time means choosing a variety of fellowships, maybe one specifically in your field, maybe one that is general, open to students in all fields. The Boren Awards, the only thing that you have to have, it's open to students in all fields, you have to have a way that you can tie your project to a national security interest for the United States. That's very broad. So for example, I had a Boren Fellowship and I studied education in Palestine, found a way to link it to national security. So there are ways to do that. That's where you talk to your mentors, you talk to my office, and we can help you make those connections and start thinking about how do I pitch myself to these different fellowship providers. So how do you get started? Say you're in your first year of a graduate program, say you're finishing up. Either way, you want to start by getting a broad awareness of what opportunities are out there before you narrow it down to a handful of fellowships that you'll apply for. So the first thing that you want to do is search fellowship databases. And I posted some links here. You may want to just note down your UCLA fellowships database, University of Illinois fellowships database. These are two really great searchable sites where you can enter in your field. You can check off different stages that you're at in your degree. So if you're in dissertation write-up phase, you can check a box so that you only see those fellowships. This will give you more of the specific depth within your field than my office provides. So my office works with fellowships that are generally open to students in multiple fields. But if you're looking for something, say, specifically in engineering, anthropology, etc., try these databases. I'd also like you to consider that list of general fellowships supported through my office. The URL for that, it's rather long here, but it's utep.edu/student fellowships. And then you can click on Find Opportunities. So after you've had a chance to look at what's out there, the next thing you want to do is check eligibility. So say you start your spreadsheet, you're all grad students, I'm sure that you have spreadsheets, you know, staying organized, right? So you list all the fellowships that you found. Okay, these are of interest in my field. And then you want to go methodically through one by one and go to the websites for these foundations, for these funders, and check eligibility. Make sure before you invest the time that you meet criteria in terms of field of study, the stage that you're at. These are often very inflexible, so it's best to know it up front. You might say, oh, well, I'm just one semester past eligibility frame. They don't care, unfortunately. So check this first, and that will help you save time later on. And also citizenship, I put there too as a requirement. But there are a number of fellowships out there for international students. Another one for graduate study is the Soros Foundation has a fellowship for New Americans, which also we're looking at. The third thing to do as you start this list is to start to think strategically about the fit, where to invest your time. This is where the deadline will become very important. If you are 1 month out from a fellowship deadline, I urge you to strongly consider whether you have the time to put together a strong application, given your other commitments. I advise students to have a minimum of 3 to 5 months to prepare a solid application. That will help ensure that it doesn't drive you mad during that time as you're trying to balance all of your other responsibilities. And to think about how many you want to apply for. I say about maybe, okay, personal experience, I applied for 10. That was a bad idea. That was really hard. I think 3 to 5 sounds reasonable, but you're all independent adults and you'll decide what's reasonable for you. What I would say is though, is to avoid thinking about it as a way of getting a certain status. So I want to get this fellowship and I need this fellowship. I need, the Gates Cambridge, or I need the Rhodes, but to think of fellowships as a means to an end. So if you need to do field research, how can you do that? Fellowships in your field, Fulbright, etc. Think of it as a way of getting where you want to go as opposed to status, which, it is, but if you go that route, you won't end up writing as good an application as if you go thinking, what do I want to achieve? What do I need to do? And who is offering funding to help me do it? Okay, so let's see what the next slide is. Okay, so I wanted to do a bit of an interactive activity here. So if you could open up the chat window, I'm going to be asking for some guesses. I can get chat to show up here. Let's see. Okay, so now I can see the chat. And I'd like you to, we're going to play a guessing game about the odds of winning a particular fellowship. And this is motivational, I promise you, okay? It will be when you see where I'm going with it. Okay, so let's start with Fulbright. And so with Fulbright, you're applying for a grant to a specific country. You can apply for one type of grant, study research or English teaching assistantship to one country per year. So you only get one choice. Okay, so let's take the applications to the United Kingdom. What percentage, I'll tell you, in 2019, there were 1,029 applications. So what percentage of applications, taking percent, not the hard number, do you think received the award for Fulbright? You just type that into the chat. 1%, 8%, 5%, 20%, 15%. Okay. Okay, y'all are very reasonable. This is reasonable. So it's 4%. It's the UK, right? Okay, so let's take France. They had 137 applications in 2019. So already far fewer, right? So what percentage of that 137 for France do you think were awarded? 5, 2, 2%, 2%. Okay, we're lowballing it, that's fair. It was 25, okay, optimism, I like it. It was 13%. Okay, so let's take a last one here. Let's take Brazil. So in 2019, there were 53 Fulbright applications for Brazil. What percentage do you think received awards? 10%, 5%, 50%. Okay, and I'll stop there because it's 56% received the award. So think strategically, right? I mean, where are you investing your time? Choosing a country, if you're applying for Fulbright, that's right for what you want to study, but also looking at those numbers, and Fulbright publishes statistics. So I wouldn't say game it, that's not my lesson here, but it's to think about where you might, if the goal is to get money to do the research, how might you broaden your scope to think about other places where you might do your research. So Fulbright, and then let's do, I'll just tell you what these stats were for some of these highly competitive UK scholarships. So these name brand ones like Rhodes and Marshall, which you've heard of. For the Rhodes Scholarship in 2019, 2,900 students started applications. 963 were endorsed by their institutions and nominated to be considered by the committee. 236 interviews were held, and ultimately 32 students, American students, were selected, which is 3.3% of endorsed applicants. Okay, so why share all of that? Because these fellowships are competitive. But now I want to share another set of stats with you, and that is the number of UTEP students who have won fellowships like these. So let me just put this camera image to the side here. Okay, so many students have applied for these awards. We have at least 26 Gilman Scholars, that's an undergraduate study abroad award. We have had 28 undergraduate and graduate students receive the NSF GRFP fellowship. So that's a lot, that's a number to be proud of. And we have amazing support for students applying for this grant. We have workshops and other resources. We've had 3 NASA fellows, 4 Truman Scholars, a Fulbright grantee, and a Ford Foundation fellow. So that's just a partial list of fellowship winners. So UTEP students do apply for and receive these fellowships. And the Graduate School and Office of Student Fellowships and Awards is here to support you as you do that. Okay, so as you are starting your applications, here are some nitty-gritty details, ways to keep track of the timeline as you go through this months-long process. First step would be when you've decided on fellowship, you've checked eligibility, you're ready to go, register. If the application is open, start that online application. Become familiar with how it works. Save yourself some time by typing in some of the easy information that you know you need to have in there. Then make a list of everything that you need to request from other people. Do you need a transcript? How many letters of recommendation do you need? Who can you think of who could write those letters for you? Develop a timeline, set some deadlines for yourself. If you know that you need your final application in 3 months, after how many weeks do you want to vet a first draft of your essay with the writing center, with a professor? So break it up into small pieces because it can be an overwhelming task if you take it all at once. Start drafting those essays right away. That's what today is for, is we are going to be verbally drafting a personal statement by talking about ourselves and our interests and how that connects to what we study. Request those reference letters. Your professors will write you a lot of letters in the time that you're a student. And so preserve that goodwill by giving them a lot of time to do it. Oftentimes they'll have a letter for you that they'll update for different opportunities, but to give them as much advance notice as you can, we say about 3 to 5 weeks. If you give more, you're just going to stand out even more as that person who is extremely considerate of your professor's time. So we'll talk a little bit about reference letters, and then next, seek reviews. Every fellowship essay goes through a minimum of 3 upwards to 12 drafts before it reaches its final form. And so key to that is getting feedback from your mentors, your research advisors throughout that process. When you're starting a research statement, so today we'll talk about a personal statement, but a research statement, this is your grant proposal. This is all about what you're going to do. So you start by discussing it with your mentors. You'll be stating the research problem. You'll be acknowledging and situating your research question within previous work. You will present a hypothesis or an argument that you will investigate through the grant, through the project. Define your methods and approach. Describe resources that you'll have to complete the project. And we kept in here from the NSF grant workshop, which is to state intellectual merit and broader impact. This is basically the theme you see across all research proposals, which is why? Why does this matter? Making it relevant within your field, and if you can, beyond as well. Because fellowship committees, the people reviewing your applications may be in your field, but they may be people from outside your field, particularly with programs like Fulbright, which are across fields. And I included this in here because I use this to write my proposal for the Boren Fellowship. You may have seen Dr. Karen Kelsey's foolproof grant proposal template, research proposal template. And I encourage you to Google this. It's widely available. But what I love about it is it boils it down to, how do I even start to write a research proposal? You start with a general topic. You get down here to gap in knowledge. I love this urgency. This gap is bad. We don't have an answer to this question. Hero narrative. I emerge. Here's how my project will fill this gap in the field, and so forth. So very similar to what you saw on the list before, but this can help if you're drafting and you want to make sure, do I have all the elements that I need? Now on to a personal statement, which is our centerpiece for today. What's different about a personal statement is it's personal. This is not just about your research. This is you sharing who is the researcher, how did I become interested in this topic? By the time you're doing a graduate degree, there is a reason you are doing it. You could be out working, maybe you are working while you're doing it, but you're also pursuing this topic and this project because you have a personal stake in it. So reflect on what that is, why you are there, why you're doing it, and show the committee. So I've managed a number of fellowship selection committees, and what sticks out to them is when they read an essay, a personal statement, and they feel that they're meeting you. Not you, the amazing researcher, but you, all of the things that led you to be this passionate, dedicated person that you are. When they can put down the essay and say, oh, I know, so-and-so, they did this. This is why. This is their personal stake in it. So what should the statement do? It needs to accomplish 4 main things. Describe why you're interested in the opportunities, why this research topic. connect it to your career goals. So this is in addition to sharing that personal story. Show a timeline. So you're coming in at a certain stage in your degree. The fellowship is the intervention that brings you on to where you will go, what you will do with the degree when you finish. Differentiate yourself from other candidates. So talk about unique skills, talk about leadership experiences, show that you are the horse that's going to win. So they're looking to invest in a leader. And whatever leadership means, we're not just talking about somebody who's headed an organization, but what does leadership look like in your lab? Are you managing, teaching others? Are you mentoring others? Are you opening the doors in your field so that others can come in? All kinds of leadership. And describe personal strengths that make you a uniquely qualified applicant. So briefly talk about letters of recommendation. This is a question I get a lot from undergraduate students who are wanting to know, who should I ask? And so you want to think about people who you've worked with closely. As graduate students, this will be a bit easier, but you want to start actively building those relationships in anticipation of asking for those letters. So you're getting involved in research, you're looking for opportunities to be mentored by those in your field. And you will typically need about 2 to 3 reference letters per application. A good piece of advice is to ask someone when you're requesting a letter of recommendation, can you write me a strong letter of recommendation for this fellowship? Because that gives them an out. If they feel that maybe they don't know you well enough, or that maybe you should ask somebody you've had more experience with, and they can say, I could, but I feel that you might be better off asking so-and-so, this other research advisor. 9 times out of 10, they'll agree to write the letter. And so what you want to do then is give them everything that they need to write that strong letter. You'll give them a brief overview of the program, why you're applying to it. That's 1 or 2 sentences in an email. You'll share some of the key accomplishments that you're highlighting in your application that you want them to talk about. And you can also give them your resume and any draft statements of purpose, personal statements that you've written so far. And then finally, when you're asking for recommendations, think about who can provide a different piece of who you are. So if you've worked with somebody who knows how, what a strong leader you are in leading others, choose that person. Somebody who speaks to your ingenuity in the classroom as a teacher, pick that person. So think about how you can strategically pick references that can illuminate different parts of you that your personal statement and statement of purpose won't necessarily cover. Okay, so I know we're a bit behind time and I've gone on, but there's support for external fellowship applications on campus. The first line of support are the professors, mentors, advisors that you work with most closely. So these are the people who can help you form and vet those research ideas, questions, and proposals. Once you start drafting essays, we recommend that you work with writing coaches at the University Writing Center. They can help with pre-writing, revision, documentation. And when you get to the final stage, you've gone through several drafts, you've taken it to the Writing Center, you're confident that you're near the end of the process, you can request a one-time final review of the entire application from my office. So I'm happy to look over the application and give you feedback from a generalist perspective, because I'm not in each of your fields, but I can give you my view from having sat on the other side of managing and sitting on selection committees to say, okay, here's how all of these pieces are fitting together, give you some feedback on the personal statement, the narrative in the grant proposal, and so forth. So I have my contact information at the bottom of the slide here. I encourage you to request final review. The rule is it has to be requested at least 2 weeks before the final application deadline. If you apply before that in a shorter time period, I may not be able to provide you feedback. So yes. Okay, so now we will transition to the personal statement worksheet. And let's see, you're muted.
All right, so there it is. And yeah, I think what we'll do is maybe just cut a little bit shorter the pair discussion so that we save some time for you to bring back your reflections from those conversations and save plenty of time for questions. And what will happen now, just so you know what's coming, my colleague Sal will be posting in the chat a link to a personal statement writing worksheet. It looks like this. And I know that perhaps some of you are participating on your phones or a tablet or some other device. So we hope that you can open it up and definitely pull this document up before we send you to the breakout rooms to have those paired discussions so that you have it as a reference. We could also broadcast some prompts to you for your discussion. But the idea here is that we're going to break you into random pairs, and you'll have about, let's say, 4 minutes per person. And the goal of this exercise is to help you ask questions of each other, to do a little mini interview that can help unlock some of the things that'll go into a very strong personal statement. Because we know it can be intimidating, right? You sit down and you think, how am I going to fill whatever the page limit is with writing about myself? It's always harder to sing your own praises than to sing those of someone else. And that's part of the goal of this activity. So listen really carefully to what your partner has to say when you ask them some of these questions. You're not going to get through all of them, but pick out those that you might be most interested in learning more about, and then really listen to your partner. Because when you come back, we're going to do a little share back activity in the chat and ask you some of the interesting things that you might have learned about the person you talked to that you would recommend they put into their personal statement when they get to that point, when they're ready to submit a fellowship application. So again, yep, you see the link to the statement worksheet. The PDF is in the chat. Looks like, can someone give me a thumbs up or maybe type in the chat if you are able to open it? Looks like a couple folks were having trouble with approval permissions accessing it. Okay, good.
Okay, and so I've divided everyone here. We had some changes here. So everybody is in a pair, and I will click the button to open the breakout rooms, and you'll get a link or a button that says go to the room. So if you could please click on that and introduce yourselves. And I think I cut you off, Dr. Connolly. You were going to, I'm not sure if you already said it. I was concentrating on the rooms. Is that all?
Yeah. Introduce yourselves to each other. Turn on your microphones for sure and your webcams if you like, and then we'll bring you back in about 7 to 8 minutes maximum. And we'll finish off the activity today with a shared conversation and some Q&A.
Okay, great. So you should have 2 people. If you don't have someone in your room with you, please come back to the main room and I will reassign you. All right, let's open the rooms. I'm going to turn off the screen share so that they just see.
Okay. Perfect. Welcome back. Yeah, this is nice because now I can actually see people's faces a little bit better. You're not just tiny thumbnails. All right. So again, welcome back everyone as you're heading back from the breakout rooms. Take a look. Oh, here we go. This is the large transfer. Welcome back. Hi. Okay, so Melanie, give me a thumbs up when it seems like we have everyone back. Okay. Wonderful. Welcome back. We hope that you were able to download some version of the PDF we shared. We understand that there are sometimes some technical challenges. You might have been prompted to sign in. So we apologize for any technical difficulty you might have had with the document. Hopefully at least one person in your pair, or some of you were groups of 3, did have those prompts to at least get conversation started. And I think what I'd like to do in the last minutes that we're together is have a quick, what we like to call chat dump. So if you are comfortable sharing, and if your partner is okay with you sharing what you learned, go ahead and type in the chat something interesting, compelling, that you learned about the person or persons that you talked to that you would recommend they put into their personal statement. So what are some of the things you talked about? I'd also invite you at this time to type any questions that might have come up in your conversations about the process of applying for external fellowships and awards, or any questions that are still lingering in your mind from the beginning of the presentation, because this is the time where we can answer those questions and talk to each other a little bit more informally. So I would say go. And I'll keep an eye on the chat. And we'll be happy to answer your questions or talk through anything that might have come up in those breakout rooms. Okay, so Manuel says, very educated. You want to say a little more about that?
Sure, I'm saying that whoever I spoke to, Alejandra, she has like she's doing her second master's, so that's pretty good. And she's planning to one day open her own clinic in kinesiology. So we're cheering for you, Alejandra. You can do it. And basically, she was telling me that I was explaining to her that I applied to so many programs. I'm a disabled veteran, and I got rejected. So I figured, nah, I'm not gonna submit no more. But she gave me a good advice to never quit, and keep applying to anything that comes your way, and hopefully one's gonna hit. And she's right. So I don't know if because some vocational rehabilitation, what it is, and maybe they don't. Okay, this guy's already getting assistance, so he doesn't qualify. I don't know.
I think her advice is very good advice.
Yes.
And I'm sure my colleagues would agree with me that we used to call our general funding presentation, apply, yes. Apply, apply. And with very purposeful intent on those 3 applies, because I know from my own personal experience and from talking with a lot of graduate students over the years that if at first you don't succeed, try again, but also there's a little bit of a volume thing. It is also true, I've seen this happen, and it has also been my experience that once you win that first one, it somehow seems that the rest follow. It's sort of like opening a ticket. And I think that's because oftentimes by that point, you have revised your personal statement, your research statement is really sharp, and then you have a really good boilerplate to apply for other opportunities. And it's more a case of tweaking than writing it from scratch. So you get to that point where you have some success and then you build on it. So I think that's fantastic advice. I'm glad that you had a good conversation with your partner too, and definitely Alejandra, go for it. We are here to support you opening your clinic. Great. I see another comment here in the chat. Michelle says we were in a group of 3, talked about educational and career goals. I really liked the reason behind their educational goals, which tied to their career goals. For example, one person's upbringing and disconnection to her culture inspired her to do her degree. For another, her mission was to serve underserved communities with physical therapy. So you were good listeners. I think that this is another reason why doing an interview or sitting down with a friend when you're getting ready to write your personal statement, because they'll hear these things and say, hey, you know what, you're creating a narrative, or that reminds me of something that you said before. And that's how you start to kind of make these connections. Also, sometimes making the most out of a very brutal short page limit for these funding applications. And that's the way that you get everything in there. So great. Alejandra says, thank you so much.
We have a hand raised. Oluwabukola, you see your hand raised? Can you unmute yourself, please?
No, that was a mistake. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem.
No worries.
So on the point of volume and experience building up, that was my experience. I applied for a dissertation fellowship that I didn't get the first time, which was, you know, fair because I wasn't that close to finishing my dissertation. I applied a second time and I got it. And the year that I applied, or in the years that I applied for those 10 awards, I got, you know, 1 dissertation fellowship and I got a language study award. So it was, the odds were not great, but it was worth it. And you do get to reuse the material. It's all useful, even if at the time it can be hard. I mean, it's never easy to hear no, but once you've started doing it, you're only going to increase your chances every time you go because you've built materials that you can reuse.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to come back also to a question someone posed to me, actually it was posed early in the chat regarding eligibility for international students. And I wanted to mention, if you're not already aware, Dr. Meinzer and I are co-presenting a workshop next week, Wednesday the 21st, same time I think, right? 12 to 1 p.m. I believe invitations may have gone out already, but we'll be happy to send them to everyone who is here today as a reminder. Maybe if we can post the registration link here in the chat. This workshop is focused on research in Germany, a program funded by the German government, the German Academic Exchange Service. This is their summer internship program, which is called RISE, Research Internships in Science and Engineering. These are really wonderful opportunities for those of you in the STEM fields that are not contingent on US citizenship. The DAD programs fund students in North America, and it's based not on your citizenship, your origin citizenship, but on the location of the institution at which you're studying. So if you're at UTEP, you're a North American applicant for the DAAD. So that's a really, really great opportunity for, again, those of you in STEM fields who are open and interested to getting a research experience abroad. Those are in the summer, so you have travel expense and get to make really great connections at a top lab or academic institution in Germany.
So I'm going to post the registration link for that workshop in the chat right now with the time, date and time also. So there is an invitation and we can send it to everyone who's attended today. But if you'd like to register, click on that link in the chat. Oh, just send it to Tracy, meant to send it to everybody. Let me do that again. Okay.
Okay, great. And colleagues, help me if I've missed any questions that are coming in. I know we're also at time and we like to respect your time since this is the lunch hour, and I probably am not the only one who's ready to get a snack. But if there are any last questions that we can answer, I think we'd be happy to do that. And let's see. So right, do you see this last question, Dr. Meinzer?
Yes, since UTEP is a minority serving institution, are there specific opportunities for funding or collaborations with labs for MSIs? That, I would say to check those databases. I know that there are ones for undergraduates. There is a NOAA program that I know also has a graduate component to it. The ones that are coming to my mind are for undergraduates, so I'm afraid I can't give you a list now, but I would guess that there are, specifically from the government agencies, is what I would suggest.
And I think Sal's reminding me of a specific question. I think we'll follow up with that person directly after, since it was a pretty specific eligibility question. And maybe we'll take one last question that's posted in the chat, just to try to keep to time. Michelle asks, any recommendations for postdoc applications? Yes, but that might be a whole other conversation. I should mention that the graduate school, although we are here to serve graduate students in our master's doctoral certificate programs, we do also support UTEP's community of postdoc scholars. And your question, of course, is thinking about postdocs at other institutions, perhaps, maybe not just UTEP. But I would say, Michelle, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'm going to post my email here in the chat. I think we also have it on the last slide of the presentation, which we'll be sharing with everyone. So you can please feel free to contact the graduate school. Our general email is gradpd for professional development at utep.edu. Dr. Meinster's office email is, let me see if I'm getting this right, student fellowships.
Yes.
At utep.edu. We can post all of that contact information in the chat. It's also on the slides, which again, we'll be sharing with you. And please stay tuned to your emails because we'll be following up with a really short feedback survey, and we always welcome your feedback. We'd like to know how you enjoyed and how useful you found today's workshop and any feedback you might have for us, including ideas for other topics that you might like to see covered by the graduate school, with or without the collaboration of the Office of Student Fellowships and Awards. We love working together, and we've been doing that a lot recently. Great, so I see our email is there in the chat.
And as we draw to a close, I can stay for a bit after. I'm not committing my colleagues to that. I know they have other engagements, but if any of you have questions for me, Office of Student Fellowships and Awards, I'm happy to chat with you. So stick around if you'd like to. And yeah, shall we wrap it up then?
Yeah, I think let's just say thanks again. It's really wonderful to see your faces and hear your voices a bit. Spend some time with us in the middle of the day. in the middle of the week. So thank you again on behalf of the graduate school, and thank you, Dr. Meinzer, for partnering with us again on one of these workshops. It's been really great working with you and having your office on board at UTEP.
Thank you so much. Yes, I love working with the graduate school. I was a graduate student once myself, so so this is it's an exciting time when you're looking for money to do your work. So we're here to help. And Daniel, I saw your question there. I don't know if you want to stay around. I can kind of give you some ideas of where to start looking for funding. But I will stop the recording now, and you are free to go. Thank you for joining us. We hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks, everyone.